Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. At the same time, there are still some kind of odds and ends, some loose ends from the realignment talk of the last week or so that I do want to get to just right now. And one of them involves a question I actually got quite a bit here over the last couple days following the Friday announcement that 3 schools are going to the Big 12, 2 schools are going to the Big 10. That question is, what the heck happens to the 4 remaining schools, Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal? And so I made some phone calls. I talked to some people at those schools. And I'll be blunt, it was a little bit of a dark, dire, sad deal. I could say quickly as a UConn alum, UConn actually was kicked out of the Big East a few years ago. It was a very similar situation. So I want to talk about what I saw, what I heard, what I know, what I think I know, and what is next for those programs. But before we do, let me start by saying this. One, I speak for a lot of college sports fans. When I say Washington State fans, Oregon State fans, Cal and Stanford, I'm sorry. And this situation sucks. There's no other way to put it. And I'll say this. I actually feel especially bad for Oregon State and Washington State fans. Cal and Stanford, and we're going to discuss this momentarily, I do believe there was a level of institutional arrogance at those schools. They kind of just thought, we're in the power structure. We've been in the power structure. We're Stanford. We're Cal. We're going to be here forever. And they didn't put the most resources, effort in. They haven't been very good in the meaningful sports. And I think they learned the hard way this weekend. Like you got to compete. Nobody is guaranteed anything. Oregon State and Washington State, on the other hand, listen, they have certain geographical limitations. I get that. They have some pretty good products on the field, though. Oregon State is coming off a 10-win season in college football. I don't know how many people know that. Oregon State last year beat Oregon. They beat Florida in a bowl game. They won 10 games. They were one of the great teams, and they're going to start this year in the top 20. Washington State, first full year with Jake Dickert as the head coach, 7 wins. Looks really good. Oregon State baseball has won national championships. So these are athletic departments that have put as much money into their product as they can, and you feel bad for them. Now, in terms of what's next, first of all, let me say this. I've seen a couple reports, they're staying together and they're going to figure it out and they're going to add teams. No one's coming. Okay, listen, I try not to criticize other media members on this show, but there's a guy who covers Oregon State, John Canzano. He's trying to make a living. I'm not being critical, but he put out this story. They're sticking together. Well, first of all, everybody has been saying that they're sticking together for the last year, and we saw how well that worked out last week. But realistically, nobody is joining those 4 schools because they have no value, because if they did, they wouldn't be in this situation, okay? The Mountain West, as an example. I get that their TV deal isn't the SEC or the Big Ten, but the Mountain West, you think schools are going to leave the Mountain West to go play with those 4 schools? Keep in mind, by the way, it would cost over $30 million in an exit fee to leave before the 2025 season. And so you think schools are going to pay $30 million? And oh, by the way, the TV deal was for $20 million with Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Utah, and Arizona State. Stop. So you're not adding schools. And realistically, I think we're going to start to find out pretty soon that these 4 schools are splitting apart. For Oregon State and Washington State, listen, I think realistically it makes a lot of sense to go to the Mountain West. It's not perfect. It's not ideal, but geographically it makes sense. Boise State's there, Colorado State's there, Fresno State's there, San Diego State, etc. And a couple things stand out. One, the money's not as good, but it's something. 2, I think it actually makes sense for the Mountain West to add those schools because, like I said, they are playing good football and they do add value. And if you're Oregon State and Washington State, I think there is one other thing to remember. this season when they'll play in the Pac-12, but their first season post Pac-12. There are still a lot of automatic bids in that college football playoff. Remember, college football playoff, 6 auto bids to the 6th highest ranked conference champions. So if you're Oregon State, go to the Mountain West. You're going to have the opportunity to win that league and go to the college football playoff in year 1. Don't know how all the TV money and the shares work out from there, but that to me is the play. Go dominate that league, go destroy everybody. And I'm not saying the league is easy to win, but then put yourself in position to have success whenever that next round of realignment comes about. For Cal and Stanford, I think it's a little bit of a different deal. Stanford specifically is in a very unique spot. Talked to somebody there today, on Sunday, I should say. Stanford doesn't even have a school president. So Stanford, like, there's nobody calling the shots there in terms of what to do. Their AD, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I haven't really heard glowing things about him. I mean, first of all, just keep in mind, the basketball program has been a mess. I think everybody kind of thought that Jared Haas, the head coach, he was out after last year. They let Jared Haas stay for another year. But I talked to somebody at Stanford today on Sunday, keep saying today, and they kind of told me point blank, we haven't heard anything from the AD's office all year long. And I think everybody over there just kind of hoped it'd be fine and prayed it'd be fine. And we're Stanford, somebody's going to want us. Listen, the bottom line, if you take any one thing out of this round of realignment, stop talking about TV markets, population centers, whatever. TV networks don't care about that anymore. They care about your brand and if you bring eyeballs to the TV. Nobody cares that Stanford and Cal are in the Bay Area. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say nobody cares. Maybe some school presidents care, but the decision makers at these TV networks do not care. They don't. And so because of it, I don't know what those two schools do. Now, Stanford financially, if they wanted to go independent for a while, they probably could. Certainly in football, they're still a national brand. They have the home and home with Notre Dame every year. I bet they could probably piece together games with like a USC, some of these West Coast schools, Cal, obviously, if Cal continues to play high-level college football. I don't know that it makes sense, though, for the rest of the athletic department. I get, I don't know that you can put together an independent schedule in basketball in 2023, 2024, 2025, this era, in baseball, in whatever. By the way, Stanford's really good at all these sports. So I don't know what this means for their future. They don't have a lot of good options right now. What they got to pray for, you know what they got to pray for? They got to pray that Notre Dame decides, you know what, we need to get into a conference, and Stanford has to ride their coattails hard. Cal, I don't know what the heck Cal's going to do, and it's really interesting. I've heard that Cal, in the last probably 6 months, at least on the basketball front, they've made a real commitment to their new head coach, Mark Madsen. They have a real collective set up. Mark Madsen has talked publicly about having, a new practice facility being built. And I believe what they essentially said was, like, we need to position ourselves so whenever the next round of realignment is, we're interesting to other schools, other conferences. Problem is, it came a lot faster than anybody expected, and now I don't know what that school does. This is a school that's in tens of millions of dollars in debt in their athletic department, and that's with Pac-12 TV money. What are you going to do when that spigot dries up? I don't know. And listen, I said it the other day. I don't know about every sport. I could see Cal being the first program that I can remember in my lifetime that de-emphasizes major college athletics. Now, the problem, of course, you de-emphasize football, you either drop down the FCS or you get rid of football. That's 85 scholarships with Title IX. You got to figure out, you're going to have to eliminate some women's sports too. So I don't think that's what Cal wants to do, but I don't know what other options you would realistically have. I don't think the Mountain West from a, what's the right way to put it? From a cultural fit, it makes sense for Cal. Don't think that makes sense. Do you somehow, keep your non-revenue sports in like a WCC with Gonzaga and St. Mary's? I don't know, but it's not pretty and it's not ideal. And I do feel bad for these 4 schools going forward. Really quickly, let me add one last thing before I get out of here, because this is something that's been rattling around in my head the last couple of days. That's this. I think Stanford and Cal specifically, They should be a wake-up call to a lot of athletic departments in the country. And what I mean by that is this. What I just said a minute ago, Stanford and Cal, I think they always kind of thought like, oh, we're Stanford, we're Cal, or we're grandfathered into this power conference structure. We don't have to compete at the highest level. We can hire an inferior coach, kind of a buddy. Like, they've made bad coaching hires. We can hold on to a coach for an extra year or two. It's fine. We're Cal. We're Stanford. What's going to happen? We're Cal and Stanford. Well, as we learned, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is promised. Nobody is loyal to anybody. And it's an interesting thought process going forward. Because remember, why did the Pac-12 ultimately break up? USC and UCLA thought they deserved more money than everybody else in the league. They didn't get it. They bounced. Then Oregon and Washington felt like we deserve more money than anybody in the league. They didn't get it. They bounced. Why is Florida State trying to get out of the ACC? They feel like they deserve more money than everybody else. They bounced. Texas and Oklahoma, the same for the SEC. And so my thought process is the next round of realignment. Yeah, I think there's always going to be a home if the ACC breaks up for the Florida States, the Clemsons, the North Carolinas, the Virginias. But I also do wonder if the next round of realignment is retraction instead of expansion. I never thought about it until the last couple of days. But if Florida State isn't happy with the ACC deal and USC and UCLA aren't happy with the Pac-12 deal, how soon until Ohio State says, you know what? We're kind of tired of subsidizing Rutgers. And Alabama and LSU kind of get in the corner and say, why are we giving Vanderbilt cut of the pie? And Michigan and Penn State say, wait a second now, why does Northwestern get the same amount that we do when we're the superior athletic department? By the way, I think that's happening in the ACC right now. Florida State's trying to get out, but ultimately it's a Boston College, it's a Syracuse that they're sitting there saying like, why do they get the same money as us? And I do wonder if that ACC deal breaks, is Boston College and Syracuse, are they the next version of Cal and Stanford and Washington State and Oregon State today?